guys, we're going to be starting our Friday pre-meeting here at 8:03 on Friday, January 21st. Good to see everybody this morning. Good to have people from the public this morning. First off, we'll look at the old business. Is there anything that anybody wants to bring up or discuss pertaining to final reading of Ordinance 1124 as a petition for contraction by James Finch on Highway 399 or 389, excuse me? Anything on that one?
The only question I had was, we didn't promise them anything before they annexed into the city, did they?
No, we didn't. And when they called and they asked how many units they could have under that certain land use, they were told how many units they could have per that land use, and that hasn't changed.
Okay.
That's not what the problem is. The problem is that we require over a certain number of units, over 50 multifamily units, we require 2 entrances.
Right.
And the way that and what they want to do won't work there because of the 2 entrance problems.
Right.
But no,
And
we told them how many units they can have, and they can have that number.
And they can't get the second entrance because it's within so many feet of another entrance or something like that? Or is there...
They could probably, it depends how you design the project, and also if they were to buy some land, maybe to the side. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there might be remedies, but I'm not the developer.
No, I was just trying to figure out why they couldn't do 2 ingress, egress areas.
Wouldn't they have to cut down on the units?
If they had less units, they wouldn't need to do 2. But because they want to do the number of units, then it triggers that 2, and it is a narrow parcel.
That's the part I'm trying to figure out, why they can't do 2.
They originally came with the number of units that they want to build, right? They originally wanted 90 units.
They just called and they asked how many units can we have. They were trying to figure out what land use they wanted to change it to, and they decided to change it to the one that they changed it to. And so we tell them how many units you can have, but you have those units, but you still have to adhere to all the other things in the ODC. You know, you still have to make sure you've got enough room for your stormwater, for the number of units you're putting in.
We told
You
them
have to make
50
sure
or
that
90.
you design it so that it will fit on the lot, basically.
But did we tell them 50 or 90?
I told them whatever the number of units is that is under that land use, which I think, was it mixed use?
I'm not sure.
Let me look. I'm not sure, I haven't got the land use information with me, I've just got the annexation, but I think it was mixed use, which allows for 10 units per acre if it's just houses, but if it was commercial as well, then it would be 20 units per acre, but that would allow for 10 units per acre. And I believe that it was mixed use. Oh, hang on, have I got the land use map here? Yes, mixed use. So that allows for 10 units per acre. So when, you know, someone asks how many units can we put on there, you can put that number of units on there, but then you have to design it so that all the other things are met too.
Yeah, and it's in my opinion, it's not necessarily up to the city to figure out how many units they want to put on or the design, or that's on them.
Not at land use stage.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
I just want to make sure we didn't promise them anything.
No.
Or there was no...
No.
Because the one thing that gives me heartburn about the whole thing, since we're here discussing, is the setting the precedent of hokey pokey with the city. You know what I mean? Whether or not we want to be in the city or in the county or in the city or in the county, depending on which way the rules fit the best. So something for us all to chew on.
Can I also say that they were aware of the having to have 2 entrances over 50 units, because when they did Landing's Landing, that was an issue then, because they'd first designed it with 1, and we had to go to the county and negotiate on their behalf to try and figure out how they could get the 2, because the county wasn't going to let them have 2, and so we figured out a way for them to do that. So it's not that they weren't aware of that requirement.
Okay, but we don't know the reason why they can't do the second entrance?
Well,
They're landlocked.
yeah, it's a narrow piece of land, so I don't know if there would have been a way to design it, but they probably wouldn't have got 2 entrances, to be honest. The county probably wouldn't have given them the 2 anyway.
Yeah.
But they were at one point looking to see if they could get one on Aberdeen, so that you could come in from Aberdeen. So there may have potentially been ways of doing it, but that's, like I said, not up to me. It's it's a developer. As to what
I didn't know if there was,
I
I thought there was something to do with the code, that why they couldn't do the 2.
No.
Okay.
And either way, whether they go back to the county or stay in Lynn Haven, we still benefit from the utilities, right?
Yeah, but we won't be able to get the ad valorem tax if they're part of the city. And not only that, when you look at the zoning map, we got a hodgepodge of counties all over the place, so they're totally surrounded by the city. And I don't know how you fix that. I don't think we can fix it, because we can't force people to annex into the city.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but this was a little unique in which one annexes into the city. and then wants to back out of the city. You know what I mean? Because we allowed them to annex into the city previously, about a year ago or so.
Yeah, February.
Yeah, and then they come back and want to get back out. I don't know. It's just,
I just think if we force them to come, if we force them to stay in the city, we're just asking for nothing but problem after problem. That's just my opinion.
no. I mean, I don't understand how that could be a problem. You're either in the city or you're not in the city, and we obviously have clearly defined city limits.
Mhm.
And if you have city all over the place, like let's say that where Marco's Pizza is, someone puts in a place there and wants to be county all of a sudden, and it's like, well, you're right in the heart of the city, so it just doesn't make sense. And I'm just talking out loud. I mean, I'm not trying to
Right.
convince anybody of anything. I'm just
Right.
telling you my thoughts on it.
But they were in the county originally, right?
Yeah, they were originally. Yep.
Okay.
I don't know, the way I look at it is,
Sorry about that.
I'm looking at from the perspective that we need to do what's best for the city.
Mhm.
And to me, if we allow them to de-annex, what benefit is that to the city?
Right.
And I don't know of any.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know of any, but I don't know of any.
I've been talking to citizens and I talked to the county assistant manager, he was accessible, Joel, and I talked to Mr. Shope, called the office and said, hey, what, have you tried everything? What's going on? And he talked, so I'm trying to get everybody's point of view on this, so.
Because if we,
And Mr. Shope said he'd be here. Chop, I'm sorry. Is that you, sir? Great. I didn't even because I want to know, where did it start? As far as how many units were intended to be on this property, and why was it a good deal to annex into the city to first of all, and what have we exhausted every opportunity to get a way out to Aberdeen Loop? Because I know the back property between Jensen and your property is Uncle Buck's storage. I mean, were they approached possibly about?
My understanding is all those avenues for a second entrance, exit, however you look at it on Aberdeen, have been approached, and it's cost prohibitive to try and go there. I mean, no one wants a easement or a road.
Figured if they were going to build storage units back there, they might co-op with you on a road in,
Yeah, as far as I know, and I didn't talk to them personally, but as far as I know, that's discussion. But I understand the discussions that are going on here. My understanding was at some point, James Finch met with the city manager, talked about what they were proposing to do. He came away with one understanding of what was going to happen, and I think the city manager has a different. And we tried to find a solution for that, and haven't been able. But I would point out to you that there's no financial gain for James to put that property in Lynn Haven. The only reason he did that was to try and let Lynn Haven get all the fees that go along with it. He doesn't have a gain for putting it in Lynn Haven. He's not going to sell properties for more. That's not part of the agenda. The only thing is he has an affinity for Lynn Haven, and he was trying to help Lynn Haven out. Now that it's not working out, I don't see how the city would want to penalize him by keeping the property in Lynn Haven instead of letting him do it.
I would like to clarify something. I don't ever promise anyone anything, and especially if I don't have the expertise in that area. If you ask me, hey, can we annex into the city? We would love to have you, but that also includes all of the rules and regs that go along with that. That conversation was never about, yeah, you can only have one interest in that. I would never go that route unless we pulled together a whole team. We just had a meeting on Wednesday. Someone wanting to annex, I do this all the time. Pull together a team, tell them all the rules and regs, Amanda's there, Bobby's there, Chris is there. Greg would have been there, had he not been out, and we give them that. But I will never promise anybody that's against our rules.
Were you at the meeting that they're speaking of?
I didn't meet with James Finch face to face.
Oh.
So I'm not sure where he's getting that from. He called and asked me. He said, I'm thinking about annexing into the city. I said, hey, great. But I'm not going to promise anything until it goes through the process. And even with that alone, the engineers and the people that work for James, they know the rules for City of Lynn Haven.
And it allows for, so if they're going to call and say how many units, does mixed use allow? We'll tell them 10 units per acre if it's just residential. If it's a mix, if it's truly mixed, then you can go up to 20 units of residential per acre. This parcel is 9.7 acres, which means potentially they could have 90 units on there. They're not asking for 90, but they are asking for over 50, and 50 is the trigger where you have to have the two entrances. So they could build, it's over 50, I think. They could build the number that keep within the code, and then they could, they could make their project work, but they want to put more houses on there, which is, again, is fine, it's allowed, they just need to have two entrances if they want to.
So that's why I asked the question earlier, if we promised them anything. So were you guys promised anything?
I wasn't part of any conversations like that, so I can't speak. When James was talking to city manager, whoever he was talking to, whether he did it over the phone or in a meeting, I don't know. But I can't speak to that because I wasn't there.
Okay.
I spoke to Brad Harris.
Yeah,
Okay.
she did have the conversation with his
He
engineer.
is the one who called to ask how many units the
Right.
mixed use allow. Because he was told he told me that he was told to call because Finch wanted to annex into the city to build townhomes. How many units would that piece of property allow? So I pulled it up, 9.7 acres, it allows 90.
And I don't see it as a punishment. I mean, I know it was stated as, why would the city of Lynn Haven want to punish somebody? But when you ask to come into the city and then you get granted that permission to come into the city and then you won't back out, that's not punishment.
Right.
I mean, that's, we're gonna have to come to a decision on that, but I don't see it as a punishment. You willfully came into the agreement.
I mean, this is one of the big things. I mean, I know we probably hear this all the time as commissioners from residents is, so much development going on. There's a lot of concerns about, infrastructure, such a big one being stormwater. And of course, this one's going to be traffic the way 389 is. It's already busy. And, we understand that as commissioners, as a city, our hands are tied on a lot of the development stuff because this is a right to develop state. But thing is, if we allow them to de-annex, this is the bottom line, we allow them de-annex and they go to the county, then they build however units that they build. I thought it was over 90, but maybe I'm wrong. And then that's going to increase that much more traffic, that much more load on the infrastructure, such as water and sewer and stormwater. And that's my concern. And to me, as commissioner, we need to do everything we can to make sure that we take care of the city the best way we can, of course, legally, ethically, morally, and all that.
Sure.
So that's kind of where I'm coming from with it.
I just want to kind of also remind you all that when somebody applies for a land use map amendment, we are not supposed to even think about what they're putting on there.
Right.
They shouldn't be coming to us and saying, we want to build so many houses, and which land use or whatever, because a land use amendment changes the land use for anything that's potentially then allowed on that land use. So at land use amendment stage, when you annex in and you ask for a land use, you shouldn't be thinking of any particular project. You should be thinking of any potential project that could go on there, because a lot of times people will annex in, and then they'll, have the land use and they'll sell it. Or they may even get a development order and then they never build it, and then someone else buys it and puts something else on there that's allowed by that land use.
Right.
So at the time when you're looking at land use, you're only looking to see whether that land use is compatible and consistent with the surrounding areas. We don't even consider what they're going to put on there until they submit a development order.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, if there's any punishment, it's gonna be for the residents, future residents in there.
Yeah.
They're gonna
Money
have
in
to
and out.
pay, if, if they annex out, they're gonna have to pay 25% more for their utilities.
Mm-hmm.
Their insurance is gonna be in question with the one entrance as far as a higher rate,
Hmm.
and they're gonna have, the traffic isn't necessarily gonna back up. Yeah, more cars are gonna enter the road, but the backup's gonna occur in their own neighborhood with only one entrance.
Go to Waterstone, one more.
Yeah, oh yeah.
There's your answer.
And then
Watch
that
how they line up and can't get out.
safety issues then as well with that many units, then that triggers safety concerns.
Anybody have anything else before we?
I
Start
just,
digesting this.
I wanted to, I'm glad I talked to Mr. Chopin, you're here, thank you, sir. Because I wanted to get everybody's, I want this to be out there in the public where, when we make a decision on Tuesday, that we've heard from everybody,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? Because this is one of those things where, the residents of Moat Highlands, I've heard from them, you know what I mean? And having spoken, the county, I think the county originally would have required a turn lane. Will there be a turn lane? To alleviate some of the traffic going in.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a possibility to have two entrances on 389 if you dedicated one to the left and one to the right? So that's I mean, there might be a way.
I don't think there's enough room for that. That's what we did, Landon's Lane, it's right there, it's
Yeah.
got one entrance and one exit.
So
There
I'm throwing it out there because I just want to make sure that we've aired out every possibility before we go to, before we go around the table on Tuesday. So, because this is one of those ones where, we're going to make a decision and there's going to be backlash one way or the other. I learned a long time ago that, if you only make half the people in the room happy, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. But this is going to be a hard one, So.
Well, yeah. I won't say anything else. We have anything else on this one? Are we ready to
You sure?
chew on that one over the
Time
weekend?
to say it. I like that we talk here
Yeah.
before the meeting because when we
I mean, you
in
saw.
meeting we have a little shorter. It's a shorter thing, and
Well, I guess my thing
less
is real quick.
perception. Yeah.
My thing is and I put myself in the situation, okay, if John Smith from Minnesota moved down here 8 weeks ago and was doing the exact same thing,
Mhm.
would it be the exact same sentiments than someone that's developed
Yeah.
a ton of stuff? Okay, that's all.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
Yeah,
food
'cause
for thought.
that's a lot of the backlash here.
That has nothing to do
And it
with
shouldn't
how I'm
be-
going to
we
make my
should-
decision.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just saying, I'm putting it out there because that's.
Because
Man.
I mean, there's some similarities in this, and there's some differences in this. But you look at the whole the school on 390, the charter school,
Bayhaven.
Bayhaven, and
You look at Hawks Landing; they have one way in, one way out.
yes, and so of course a little bit different because it's
But they have two lanes.
They're single family,
Right.
not multi-family.
Yeah,
homes.
but still a lot of folks.
it is,
But
and
the
if
road's different, and this is just all about.
And they have a longer stretch of road before the light too, and they have a light.
right,
Yeah.
and of course theirs gets busy when school gets out because the school is right there.
Right.
But they also you got Train, you got Jensen too, but Train employs a lot of people, and that's going to add to that flow to Aberdeen Loop or whatever that's called, and that's going to add a lot more traffic.
And it's a mess
Yeah.
at 3 o'clock when they get off shift.
Yep.
I mean, it's a long.
When I first looked at the aerial map, I thought, oh, well, there's an option because Jensen was I thought Jensen butted up to it, but there's another property holder in between Jensen and the back of their property.
Yeah.
It would have been great because Jensen would have worked with them, I guarantee
Mhm.
you.
All right. Well, let's move on to number 10, the new business discussion and possible approval to award Morris Enterprises bid number 21 and 22-03 for the operational lease for park food and beverage concessions.
Good morning, folks. What I recommend is the approval of this concession contract. Over the last couple of years, we've hired part-timers, mostly teenagers, to run our concessions. We have 2 concessions at Kane Griffin, 1 at the splash pad at Kensall. And we've had numerous problems. They're young people, so
Yeah.
it's attendance issues nonstop. In this particular situation, this Morris Enterprises will have a 3-year contract. The city manager was successful in renegotiating the initial. She came in with an 18.5%, and she has now agreed to the 18% year 1. Year 2 would be 20%. Year 3 would be 23%, plus a monthly lease on the facilities of $250 a month. So I think what we're doing is we're getting rid of a lot of the headaches using the young folks. We've got someone who should be able to give us a quality product. She has worked for, as a matter of fact, I think she does concessions at Panama City Beach now. She did the county cafe inside the county administrative building. So she's well versed on how to make this successful. And I think this takes a headache off of us, plus it allows us to bring in some revenue.
So I read that it's gross, we get 18%, well,
I think it's
18% is
18%
gross.
Correct.
So even if she takes a loss, we still get the 18% of gross.
Plus 250 a month.
250 a month.
And the city has the option to renew for another 3 year
Right.
at the end of that contract.
And she buys and owns the inventory. It's
That's
Correct,
exactly right.
correct.
And she did used to do the concessions for the city several years ago. So she is very well versed in Lynn Haven.
What happened there?
When it went out to bid, her bid was low, and Paracel came in with a higher bid. So it was the highest bidder. And I think I can't remember the exact amount it was. I think his may have been, gross sales were a little bit higher than hers. And so he got that bid. But
For
right
the
after,
concessions?
For the previous contract.
previous
Oh, okay.
contract.
Do we
before
set
storm.
the hours or does she set her own hours?
What we're going to do is we're going to make sure that splash pads, when they are open, there is concessions available. And whenever we have league play going on, there'll be concessions available.
Football and all that
Yes,
over
ma'am.
there.
And this will also bleed into the new sports complex, both inside the gym and at the new baseball fields.
And of course, since she's already familiar with all this, she knows all the food safety stuff.
Exactly.
And
Absolutely.
And
I
you
wouldn't
have,
know.
and the city has recourse if she should go astray
We can give her 30
I mean,
days notice.
in the
for
first
cause
33
yeah.
years.
Mhm.
yeah,
and
and I would,
all the state requirements.
Exactly. Yeah.
I would imagine with all the expenses that we have now when we hire people to run the concession, that this would be more, we'd make more profit this way as opposed to the other way.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So whichever year the sports complex comes on, should we tie in at that percentage?
For at least the duration of that 3-year
Yeah, I don't-
contract. And this, honestly, this is a win-win for us and her.
Yeah, I don't see any disadvantage to this.
And really, when we think about growth and what's going to happen in the next year or so, where we're going to be opening up the sports complex, the ball fields,
amazing.
all of those things that are going to be going on, we need people that are expert in the fields to handle the concessions for us so that we can concentrate on our residents, give our residents more service and more activities, because we do spend a lot of time putting people in the concession. Now, splash pads, we will have to still man that, but the concession is a large part of that. So I think it'll be much better.
Not that I'm expecting this to happen, but if someone were to get sick from something that they serve, that would fall on them, not on us then, right?
Yes.
So there's less liability for us.
Yes,
in this whole
they
thing.
have insurance in here.
Insurance.
That's
Yeah, I
exactly
saw
right.
that.
And they're paying off of their gross profits.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
And she is fairly well dialed in on where the profits are. Like, for instance, we don't have fountain machines. And that's the first thing she said, can we switch these to fountain? So
Wow,
Buffalo Rock's okay with it. So she understands the big picture.
cool.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Doug.
All right. Thank you. folks.
All right, let's go to number 11 here. Discussion and possible approval of the American Rescue Plan funded projects. That's going to be Public Works Director and City Managers. Chris?
So as everyone probably knows, we were awarded some of the American Rescue Plan funding. And we sat down and went through some projects that weren't on other funding lists and looked at some other things that we could do with this money. and decided on the 7th Street drainage improvements, which the plans were done in 2019, and that is the east side of 7th Street here, all of that outfall. The East 10th Street drainage, Commissioner Tender, we've talked to several residents there in that area, so that is right down here, the outfall to Davis Lake there, the 1600 block of Indiana, and then the reuse plant at the new Mill Bayou, which is two birds with one stone with that. Basically helps with the new DEP requirements and allows for future capacity out on the east side of the city.
Anybody have anything on that one? Pretty cut and dry. Ms. Vicky, you have anything to add on that?
I like free money.
We do too.
What's the
Yeah.
potential startup on?
I've always heard there's no such thing
So
as free
if
money.
you all approve
Somebody's
this
paying it.
Tuesday, Indiana and 7th Street can be put out to bid. As soon as you give the word, the plans are done on those. We will get a task order for 10th Street, and I can't speak out of turn of the reuse, but I'm pretty sure that's already kind of ongoing. You know, there's already a preliminary plan. It won't take much to get that design and get that out as well. So 2 projects will be put out to bid and constructed this year as part of that.
And this money does have to be spent by 2024, the first set of
It has to be
first
fully committed by
Full.
the end of 24 and fully
spent
spent
by
by the end of 26.
26.
All right, last item we have, first reading, thank you, Chris. First reading of ordinance 1126, removing the permit fees for food trucks per the Florida statute 509-102. And Kevin's not here.
He's on. He
But
should be on the line.
He's online.
Yes.
Kevin, what we got there, buddy?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
This one, and we did a food truck ordinance, I guess, in 2019, and again in 2020. The legislature changed the law later on in 2020 and preempted to the state any licenses, fees, registrations, things like that for food trucks. So what this ordinance does is goes back in and it basically strips out any sort of permit or registration or license for food trucks, but we pretty much leave the rest of it the same.
So the state basically just took precedence over municipalities.
Yeah,
That's exactly what they
that's
did.
exactly what happened.
So if we allow them in, they can just go wherever they want and come and stay or go.
Well, they're reading this. I see there's some
There's some
restrictions we can
rules, but we
put,
can't charge them.
but
any
we
permit.
can't stop. Yeah,
Mhm.
and that's kind of like what I talked about the last meeting why I brought it up with the with like traffic tickets and stuff. It's just
So what are the restrictions? What are the rules? Can you set a certain area of your town or?
And in the ordinance, it does talk about commercial areas. If we're putting on a city-sponsored event, we'll charge them $50 to set up there. There are certain parameters in there where they can set up the time frame. We can still do like the time frames of and the time of day they can set up. We just can't charge them a permit fee.
So can they go to like a public parking lot or?
That's a commercial area.
Come park right across the street from you if they
Yeah.
want,
Sure
out in
can.
your parking lot.
Sure
park
can.
right-
They can come right in front of me and park on the street as long as they're so many feet away from the curb or a corner.
They don't need a business permit like everybody else who operates a business in the city.
Kevin,
Business license.
I think they need
still need
they
that.
need the business license. The city cannot charge them a permitting fee of $150. That state is taking care of that.
So they would still have to pay for their business license, just not
Right.
the permit to set up or to go to the event or whatever. It's odd to me that they would even get involved in such a local, low-level issue.
I just can't help but to think of that one taco stand. I think it's tacos down there on the corner of 390, and they sit in that corner grocery or gas station
Yeah,
right
for the
there on
gas station.
390 and 98. They're there every single time. It looks like they permanently just set in.
Yeah.
You know. I mean, that could easily happen here,
It could.
and we could have them just parked everywhere. And I don't deprive them of any making money for sure.
Sure.
And I know a lot of companies who use them and will call them and say, we're having a thing today. Can you come by about 5? And they just drive in the parking lot and feed everybody and leave, you know. But
It's
we
out of
sure
our
don't-
hands now. I mean, it's
And
in Tallahassee's hands.
I think that's our issue is, to me, that's why you want municipalities to have some type of control.
Mhm.
You know, to me, I'm more for, you know, smaller government, like empowering the municipalities and that, as opposed to higher government like state and federal, because every place is unique and has their own variables and dynamics and things like that. And yeah, so I know nothing we can do as a Lynn Haven commissioners, but the only thing I can think of is maybe talk to our state reps and that and explain our grievances with it.
Everybody send Jay Trumbull 5, 6, 7 messages each.
Yeah, seriously.
Anyway, we have anything else on that one? Anybody from the public got anything on these items? No? Well, we're not letting the public, we're not doing public commentary.
So, we do have the option of tabling this on Tuesday, this
Well, this
thing,
is first reading.
Yeah,
first reading, okay.
Yep,
And
no vote.
taking a look at our statutes, the way we have it set up now for food trucks.
Yeah, it's in here.
It's in
right?
here.
Okay.
They got
So,
line
yes,
outs and that,
absolutely.
so we
Okay.
have some time to look. We got
Yeah.
plenty of time to look at
Yeah.
it, see if we want some
Yeah.
changes.
This is, and if you remember, this is a ordinance that you guys went through several times before you got to this point here. It took you a while to get here to make sure it's fair to everyone. And then, state came in 2020 and said, no, you can't charge permitting fees. We could still keep some, restrictions in here, but we just can't charge that.
All right. Well,
We have one other thing Kevin needs to discuss with that did not make the agenda.
okay. Well, then I just accidentally dropped it.
Kevin?
You and Amanda.
We talked to DOT again yesterday, and they would like us to go ahead and make a motion and vote. We can do that Tuesday to proceed with the southern portion. You know, what we talked about, we divided the north of 390 and then south of 390. They would, before they present us with the grant agreement, they want us to go ahead and have a commission vote to say, okay, let's move forward with the southern portion. And that will trigger DOT to send us that grant agreement, which we'll then have to come back and vote on again. But what we're wanting to do is on Tuesday, just have a discussion and possible approval of giving the city manager authority to tell DOT, let's move forward with the southern portion of Rails to Trails south of 390. So we've already discussed this, obviously, but they do want us to go ahead and make a motion and vote on it. And so we told them we could do that on Tuesday, if you guys are okay with that.
This is just for the grant for Rails for Trails. all
That's
this is.
correct.
Yeah.
It's really to tell DOT, send us the grant agreement for 390 south.
Has nothing to do with Marina Island though, really, right? We're
Correct,
just talking
correct.
rails to
We're
trails.
still
Mm-hmm.
correct. This is just to get DOT
Well, trails up to
going
331
on
to
getting us that
390.
grant agreement.
Yeah, they wanted to start opposite end of where their boulevard's going to be. Originally, it was supposed to start where Marina was, best I recall, but they wanted to move it to get more time to design the boulevard and all that
Yeah.
jazz. So I think it's just getting the ball rolling.
I have no problem
Yeah,
with that.
this is just to get the ball rolling on DOT's end. If we can just have some, it should be pretty simple. But I think the idea is add discussion and possible approval of requesting grant agreement from DOT. Would pretty much be the motion on Tuesday.
Okay. Can we just add that to, make it item 13? And
Yes, we
Add on
will. I
that.
just want,
Yeah, I
We
think
will.
we added to the agenda for Tuesday. Yes.
okay. Thank you. Anybody got anything on that before we adjourn? Anything else, Miss Vicky?
No, sir, that's it.
Okay. Meeting adjourned.